morning. Thank you for staying tuned to Citizen TV. You're watching Daybreak on this 7th day of August 2023. It is 25 years since the 1998 bomb attack in Nairobi at the Cooperative House. And of course, several victims continue to wait for compensation, as is the story that you find on the two dailies, the front page of the Standard and the Daily Nation. But also it is an important week because it marks 1 year since the last general election. And so much appears to have been stuck in time, especially the political conversations in the country. There are still questions as to the credibility of that election. The president has been in office for more than 10 months now. Says that he continues to stabilize the economy. In fact, he says that the economy now is stable and ready for the takeoff, and so much views that come from that. We'll also be speaking about the talks that are expected between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, especially to resolve some of the political questions that have been bedeviling the country. We'll be speaking to the panelists here, whom I want now to introduce. Fred Okango is the Secretary of Political Affairs of the Independence Party, KANU. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Titus Lote is the Member of Parliament for Kacheliba constituency, West Pokot County. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
We have Senator Godfrey Osotsi from Vihiga County. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
We're still expecting the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, that is Gladys Boss. As soon as she's able to join us, she'll be on the set to have this conversation. And again, like I told you this morning, those main stories on the front page of the Daily Nation: unemployment, pandemic, Azimio Kenya Kwanza first meeting set for Wednesday. Then Azimio Fury at ICC Can tour is the story on the Standard. Opposition says it is against rules of the game for the prosecutor of the ICC to engage President Ruto when police have killed protesters and no action taken. Then Raila rules out a handshake deal with Ruto, and that story of the bomb blast. And then an opinion here: teachers' pay slips are mutilated beyond imaginable levels. The cost of living is high, and any attempt to touch teachers' pay slip might not be received positively. Of course, they're talking about the impact of the statutory deductions that have been raised over the past few months, including the NSSF contribution that was raised a few months ago. I think it was in the month of March or April or thereabout. So the teachers are complaining about the impact of that. And I want to begin with the panelists here because a lot has been happening in terms of what the government has been doing. Last week, we'll get to the question of talks later. But first, we've seen a lot of statements about the state of government, especially now that we are 10 months in. And if you talk about 1 year since the election, the president speaking about subsidized fertilizer, which is something that I've seen in the political circles, questions being raised. The conduct of the PSAs and the CSAs, some of them being said that they are clueless, but also the president giving an appraisal of himself, that he has so far done such a commendable job in stabilizing the economy. Senator Osotsi, what would be your assessment of all these activities in as far as how far you've come in this regime?
Well, there isn't much to talk about the performance of the economy so far under the Kenya Kwanza regime, because, you know, the dollar continues to rise, and that's a very important economic yardstick. That means we're not faring very well internationally in terms of our economy. You have seen also the cost of living has continued to skyrocket. Prices of essential commodities, prices of foodstuffs have continued to go up, and that is not a good sign. That means inflation will continue to rise unless something fundamental is done. The unemployment, I've seen in today's nation, the issue of unemployment has been emphasized, and then unemployment will continue to rise when the effects of the Finance Act come to life, particularly the 1.5% housing levy. It's going to be a huge strain on employers, particularly.
Right.
Many employers may decide to shift to other countries. We also have the challenge of increased taxation. Increased taxation in many fronts is also going to affect the performance of the economy. So, the issue of debts, public debts, is here with us. Eurobond is just about to mature. They're going to pump in a lot of billions. We have SGR and others. So really, the situation is not as rosy as Kenya Kwanza would want us to believe. There is a lot they need to do, okay. And they appreciate it, that there is quite a lot they need to do. And that's why 1 year after they came into office, they belatedly decided to sign performance contracts, clearly indicating that there is a problem. There is a performance problem within the regime. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they will be able to stabilize the economy if they don't deal with the political situations in the country. The issue between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, it is a serious problem which they need to address. Mm-hmm. You know, some people take this issue very lightly, but I want to tell you some. Mm-hmm. Azimio controls half of this country in terms of support. And even if they say they won the election, if they won the election, as they claim, with a margin of only 200,000. Mm-hmm. And these other guys are controlling another half.
Do you think that has changed?
And when we have such a huge section of the country against a sitting regime, mm-hmm. it will always affect the economic performance of that regime. So the sooner they deal with this problem, the better for them. But from the way they are handling the situation, I don't think they have the interest or even the capacity to resolve the political situation in the country. And that will also interfere with the economic situation in the country. The other thing is that the mismanagement of the foreign policy. Mm-hmm. When you sit somewhere and you want to really understand what is the foreign policy for this regime, you don't see it. It's contradictory. Today, it looks like they are with the West. Tomorrow, they look like they are with the Far East. The next day, they look like they're with Russia in this crisis of Ukraine, Russia. The other day, you saw Iran coming in and appearing to be having a deal with them. So they don't have a concrete foreign policy. And if you don't have a concrete foreign policy, it will always affect the performance of the country.
Is there a problem the administration relating with as many countries as possible, or what is defining that relationship?
I think they don't have a policy at all. Because
what would the model
if for example, let me tell you, the other some time back I heard that they were going to spend over 130 billion shillings to buy farm machinery from Belarus. Mm-hmm. Belarus is a country that is facing trade sanctions, economic sanctions from the West because of their involvement in Russia-Ukraine war. That will always have a strain in terms of decisions around investment, decisions around economic engagement with some players in the West. Mm-hmm. You have seen the Iranians. Iranians are in the bad books of Americans and the Western world. Mm-hmm. Engaging them in any way will also trigger some kind of slow, it may not be open, but the slow economic embargo on a country. Mm-hmm. So they really need to look at their foreign policy The other aspect is how they are managing the whole question of cost of living. Cost of living is a serious problem.
Okay.
They keep on saying, oh, leave it to us, we know what we are doing. But let me give you an example. For example, the decision to import, bring in petroleum products from Saudi Arabia on a loan arrangement so that you can push down the dollar. That decision was a bad decision because the international prices of petroleum and related products is dictated by international trade.
Okay.
So that collapsed because the dollar has not gone down.
I'll get back to you. Let me first hear from the other panelists. Honorable Lotay, your assessment of where we are. Actually, let's listen to what the president said yesterday in as far as his strategy to managing the economy.
We are building our country on the solid foundation of our economy built around the taxes we raise. Mnajua mzee Kibaki, wakati alichukua usukani kama rais, tulikuwa tunakusanya bilioni 200 kama taifa. Akatuambia tulipe ushuru. Nyinyi mlisikia, nyinyi mnajua.
So that's the president yesterday setting one of his predecessors. But do you think, even as we target to raise the taxes, are we focusing on the production side as we should to make that sustainable?
Thank you, Sam. I think, first of all, to say good morning. And two, to be able to follow up with what my colleagues said and also what the president has said. In assessing this government for the last 10 months, this government has not been in office for a year. They have been in office for 10 months. I think there are goofs, but there are also very positive things that this government has done. We are seeing that we, as a government, inherited a very serious conditions that were left by the predecessor. One of these conditions is the Eurobond, which is maturing this year. 270 billion, which was supposed to be paid. But because if you look at the economy that was inherited, this economy was actually an economy that was under debts. And it is upon the current regime to start repaying these debts. And immediately you start repaying, as you start repaying this debt, let me continue.
Allow me 1 minute. When he says it was inherited and the current president was the deputy president and sat in the cabinet.
Okay,
so you should not use the word inherited.
Let me clarify, and I think it's important that I'm also given time to say something.
Please go ahead.
The current president was the deputy president for the first 5 years, 2013 to 2017. 2018, on March 8th, there was a handshake between the former prime minister and the president, and you know what happened. He was actually locked out. He could not even attend those cabinet meetings.
But
so he wasn't sitting. He wasn't sitting.
After that time,
he wasn't sitting. He wasn't sitting in the cabinet.
He
wasn't making decisions.
Honorable Senator,
He wasn't making
the
decisions.
President
on the basis, he was the deputy president, but he was the deputy president by name. He wasn't the deputy president by action. And the reason why he actually nearly stayed like an opposition leader, when decisions were made in this country, he was not part of those decisions. And so when the inheritance of this dilapidated economy basically means that
how can you say that as a matter of fact? Yet we saw images of him sitting in cabinet.
He will be invited, sometimes he will not be invited. We have actually seen this president, when he was deputy president, hounded out of a state house in Mombasa when he goes to sleep. He actually is in records that he was even paying some of his workers through his own pocket because they were not paid by the state. You could hear ministers belittling the deputy president. And you could see within functions, the classical function was that was in Bomas, where he was literally an outsider within the government. So sometimes let us not try to bury our hearts in the legalities. Let us look at the realities. How was it? The president was actually locked out when he was the deputy president in the second term of Uhuru's government. And so when we are talking about all these decisions that were made in the second term of Uhuru's government, they are decisions that he was not part of. Whether he sat in those meetings, his actions, his decisions were not listened to. I will be able to mention all this. But the thing is, I'm coming back to where we said, this government then inherited a very serious economic situation where we were supposed to pay the Eurobond. It is maturing this year when this government of Ruto is in. All the short loans that were actually inherited were supposed to be maturing. And the reason why the government is really struggling to ensure that they pay the loan, and you know the first charge in our economy, when our budget is to pay our foreign debts and to pay our local domestic debts. So we can actually say that the reason why even the dollar is falling is because of three things. One, the dollar is falling because we've actually been we've come through a period where our weather have not been very good, and so our production has not been very good. And the investment onto agriculture, which is, we're told, employs 80% of this country, was not invested. So we invested more on our roads, we invested more on things that were not in agriculture. And so we started losing our production. We killed all our industries. Within that period where Uhuru was the government, we do not have sugar, and it comes from a sugar manufacturing belts. We do not have those ones again. They killed those agricultural production. We killed the maize. We killed the production of anything that was agriculture. What do we expect out of that? We expect production on food prices, food items to not be there. And so the food prices will go up because we will expect that this country becomes a net importer of food items. And yet God had given us the opportunity to be able to produce food in this country. And so this government is struggling to ensure that the food prices are coming low. And how are they doing it? They're giving out fertilizers that are subsidized. Now, from 3,500 now to 2,500. So we expect the following coming here to have more food production in this country. Two, the dollar is falling because a lot of our monies are now used to pay the loans. And so there is a demand for the dollar. And when you have a demand for the dollar, you expect the dollar to become more pricey. And so when we are blaming this government for the falling shilling and the rising dollar, it's because of events that have been created for the last 10 years. So this government is taking up this and trying to correct it. So we can actually say that the factors of production for food, which has actually become an issue and an item for the discussions within the Azimio, is we need to go to the farms and produce. There is no other way for us to be able to reduce our food prices. And our food prices are made up of 5 factors from a layman's perspective. We need the land, which has been given by God. We need the water, which is actually this year generously given by God. And I think God has actually decided to bless this government because this is the year we have actually seen rains coming in full swing. We need the fertilizer, we need the seed, and we need the hardworking Kenyans. If we combine the 5 factors, then we can be able to say that the food prices is coming down. And let me tell you this, Sam. The reason why the talks that we...
I will get to the talks, don't worry, Honorable Lote.
But I'm still discussing that.
No,
when we get to the talks, okay, I'll remind you about that when we come there. But let me not be interrupted.
So, no, Honorable Lote, I mean, you're just starting. We'll have enough time to talk about all this. Good. But let me hear from Fred, your assessment, because a lot is going on. It's actually more than 10 months. Let me just get that correct. It is 10 months, 26 days, because it will be 11 months in just about 6 days.
Yes. Still within 10 months.
So it's 10 months, 26 days. So it's sufficient time to take stock of what has happened.
Absolutely.
But in your reflection, because a time like this, the campaigns had just closed, that is last year, because they closed on 6th of August. The place we were at that time versus now, what is your assessment? And when you look at the entire governance, whether it's the executive, parliament, and the judiciary, in moving the country forward, how are we faring, and how is that trajectory?
Thank you, Sam. Let me, in my own reflection, and I'm sure majority of Kenyans too, where we are today, a time like this, 1 year ago, as you rightfully put it, Kenyans were very hopeful. They were hopeful because they had hoped for a government that will be in place to secure their lives, a government that is in place with a cogent plan to lower the cost of living, and a government that will respect human rights. And therefore, they were ready for that government. Today, as we speak, Sam, we have a regime in place that, you know, there are very good people in this country, and also there are very good institutions that silently put them into check without making a lot of noise. There's a promise tracker that one of the institutions has put, and I don't even want to go to the short term, long term. I want to go just to the first 100 days of Kenya Kwanza regime. The tracker shows us that generally out of all these, 50 promises have not started, 37 supposedly ongoing, 1 already stalled, 13 broken already, and supposedly 8 completed. But let me just break it down. This is a regime that rode into power with the promise that they are going to secure the lives, specifically the lowly place they call hustlers. And therefore, some of the promises they made as follows. Number one, they said, in the 100 days, they'll end extrajudicial killings. We have seen in the recent past people being killed. They said they'll complete transfer of fully devolved functions and follow them with money. They say they'll respect court orders and judgments. They said there will be a special tribunal to look into the issue of human rights violations. They said there'll be a quasi-judicial public inquiry, particularly the state capture. Today, look at Parliament, some. Look at the executive. Look at the independent commissions, or rather offices. In our view, we feel that they're not independent anymore. They are captured. But interestingly, they also told us in their campaign, and they documented it, that they'll reduce fuel prices, lower the pump cost. Instead, immediately they got into power, they scrapped off the fuel subsidy. That has been reflected in the Finance Act. So generally, without going into details, we have seen a situation where the country is suffering. It is suffering because of mismanagement, both at the executive level and at the legislative level. And this one I want to explain. Honorable Ruto himself admitted to the world and to the public when he was conducting the performance contracting for the CSS, that some of his CSS do not actually know what they are doing. And he said he knows more than them. He knows more than them. He said that. He also admitted that day the others who came late. That points to the fact that the suitability, competency, and personal integrity of these cabinet secretaries is in question. And therefore, in his own view, not the views of the public, leave alone the public, they're not suitable, they're not fit to hold such offices. I'm wondering why he has not fired them up to now. Because he admitted himself. And that tells you that in terms of service delivery, if these are the people that he relies on to deliver services to the public, and I've outlined some of the services they promised to deliver, then it is true that these are people that are going to fail him. They're going to fail him, they're going to fail this country. Our view as Azimio is that we must go back to the drawing board and reassess ourselves as a people and reassess the regime as a people. We have assessed
but let me ask you a question here. So you said that the prices of fuel have gone up, and it's because they scrapped the subsidies, but they have given explanations on numerous occasions, indicating that they had to be lifted because they were bad for the economy, that the money was going into the wrong hands. Isn't that convincing? But also, do you think the economy was doing so well to an extent that it is possible to collect money to give back for consumption?
Sure. The reason they have given it is a burden to Treasury. That is the wording. It was a burden to the Treasury. It means Treasury was paying more. But also politically, they said this money was going into wrong pockets. But now, the economy was not doing even well at that time. And as Senator Sosi has rightfully put it, at that time, Honorable William Ruto was the principal assistant to the president.
Just answer the question.
So, to answer you, the economy was not doing well at that time too. The reason they have given might look justifiable, but they're the people in the seat of power today. So you cannot take any excuse. The expectation from the public is that you solve that problem pronto.
That's what I'm asking. I'm asking a practical question. So here, the government has come and said that we cannot continue the subsidy program because it is bad for the revenues of the country. We are not at a good place to an extent that we can afford to continue paying debt, but also collecting money to finance consumption for the citizens. In any case, now you see what has happened. Even the VAT on fuel has gone up. But was it a good idea to continue with subsidies?
In our view, and you have said this, it was a good idea because when there is a problem, you don't extend it. However, you look for short-term, mid-term, and long-term. The short-term solution in our view as at that time and at this time was to extend the subsidies so that you cushion your people in the short term as you look for a better solution in the future. But they removed it immediately, and the people are suffering.
So what is the better solution?
The better solution was a subsidy.
No, it was already there, so I'm asking, what is that?
They removed it, and that's why I said one of the
You just told me they should have kept the subsidy as they look for a better idea. That's what I'm asking for. What is that better idea?
If we wanted a better idea of, in future, increasing the the levies, but in the interim, as you plan that, because these are policy issues, they can be discussed in Parliament, they can be proposed in the executive, continue with what is there first that people have seen to be working as you look for that better idea.
You're
the better idea can
question, Fred.
No, Sam, the better idea can come as you proceed.
So you don't know it yet?
No, I'm not saying I know it. They are in the people in power. I'm not in power.
So you don't know it?
I am saying they are the people in power, Sam. If they wanted a better idea than subsidy that was there in the previous regime, they should have extended the subsidy first to cushion the people as they look for that better idea. As it is now, high taxes on fuel levy is not a better idea.
Okay. Senator, so Raila Odinga is saying something which you need to... No, we take a break first. When we come back, we continue this conversation as well.
Before you go for a break,
no,
just 1 second.
It's long overdue. Let's just take it. Okay. We come back shortly. You're watching Daybreak on the 7th day of August 2023.